Dear Boomers, yesterday we interviewed John Mears, who recently wrote a book called Pure Love, which has to do with the death of his daughter about a year and a half ago and how she started to communicate with him after death, the after death communication of his daughter, who was immediately transported into a life, the afterlife of pure love. And she's not alone. She has other people with her who are also in this amazing world of pure love. And she emphasized that we do not have to wait to die to experience pure love, and we can start practicing it, experiencing it right now. But what happens a lot of times when people die and leave behind their parents, in this case, Angela's parents, she was 35, is that the people who are left behind experience survivor's remorse, survivor's guilt, and some people feel it and some people don't. And they have no control over the situation, but they feel like they could have done something different. Survivor's remorse is a term that describes guilt and psychological turmoil when people experience after surviving an event in which others did not survive. So we're going to explore this today, what causes it, and how those affected can work through towards healing. We have to heal. Maybe it's a form of healing. This guilt, and of course, as we described yesterday, guilt, anger, and resentment are lower vibrational fields. I guess all we'd have to do is realize that we weren't meant to die at that moment. So, survivor's remorse is a feeling of deep guilt or regret experienced by someone who has survived a traumatic event which others did not, and it can occur in various situations, such as a natural disaster, a war, an accident, a natural death due to illness, or even a global pandemic. And the survivor may ask themselves questions such as, why me? Why did I survive when others did not? As in the case of John and Mamie, why couldn't I have died and not her? These feelings can lead to anxiety, depression, and loss of self-worth. Now, let's talk about certain situations that can cause this kind of remorse, survivor's guilt. The emotions tied to this often stem from a deep sense of empathy, but there are psychological and social factors that intensify it. Here are a few triggers. The empathy and compassion. Survivors often feel empathies for those who did not make it, and their compassion for the suffering of others may actually manifest as guilt. They feel it's unfair that they survived and others did not. And then they feel a sense of responsibility. Some survivors feel they could have done more to save that person. What could they have done? Or what could they have done when they were alive that they didn't think to do? Maybe they should have said, I love you more often. It's a feeling of responsibility that can lead to deep emotional distress, even though they had no control over the event. And that's important. We can't control. In fact, it's good to let go of our control in every situation. Letting go of control is a spiritual practice. People can lose their sense of identity, their sense of purpose. And after surviving a tragedy, some people do struggle with their sense of purpose. They may question why they were spared, leading to a sense of confusion in their role in life going forward. They may lose a belief in God. How could God allow this good person to die? That kind of thing. And sometimes societal beliefs, such as the idea that life should be fair, as defined by whom? Or that survivors must have done something right to escape death. can intensify feelings of guilt. Now, as Angela Mears has taught us, when she died, she went into the arms of another situation that was much more evolved than life on earth can be. So these pressures can be harder to reconcile. Why one survived and why one did not. Now, here are some real life examples of people who experience survivor's guilt. And here's a really one that I have read more often than not is the veterans of war. Many military veterans experience survivor's guilt after seeing their comrades fall in battle while they survived. The bond between soldiers is strong, and the sense of loss can be overwhelming. Veterans often replay the events in their minds over and over, questioning why they made it home and others did not. As in the case of accidents and disasters, after a plane crash or a car accident, or after one of these hurricanes that sweeps through and some people survive and many do not. Survivors may wrestle with the randomness of their survival. Even though it's outside their control, they often carry guilt for being the lucky ones. Now, this being the lucky ones is also a question that Angela has shown us that maybe she's the lucky one and maybe we are not. But I feel like I'm lucky no matter what. I mean, I don't feel that way. After hurricanes or earthquakes, people grieve over the lives lost and feel guilty for not being among them. Pandemics. My husband died because of COVID. I believe my brother died of COVID too. And I know that a lot of people lost their loved ones in that pandemic. Some people survived while the loved ones passed, and they feel an acute sense of guilt. Why did I make it through and they did not? These thoughts can be emotionally paralyzing. So people can feel depression and anxiety after a loss. Survivors may experience persistent sadness, a sense of emptiness, excessive worrying, and they might struggle with anxiety, fearing that they'll never be able to overcome their guilt. And I wonder, do some of these situations and some of these experiences, such as survivor's guilt, have to do with people not believing in life after death? And that's an idea. Flashbacks and PTSD. Survivor's remorse is tied to post-traumatic stress syndrome, and if they're involved in the situation where the people have died, they're all kind of in the same place. Flashbacks to the traumatic event can cause panic, insomnia, distress, intensifying feelings of guilt. Social withdrawal is a very common occurrence after such losses. The survivors isolate themselves from others, feeling they don't deserve to be happy or lead a normal life after what they experience. Loss of purpose or direction. Some people find themselves questioning their purpose after surviving whatever it is that they have survived. The existential crisis can lead to a loss of motivation and a sense of aimlessness. But as in all existential crises, the dark before the dawn, we have to realize that there is an upward trajectory when there is such a crisis. So how can survivors cope with these heavy emotions? While survivor's remorse can be an overwhelming experience, there are steps that can help the process. So when you feel these feelings of guilt because you survived and your loved one did not, acknowledge and accept your feelings. This first step in recognizing that these feelings are valid, and you're not alone. It's very common. It's okay to feel guilt, but it's essential to remind yourself that your survival was not a result of something you did wrong or did right. It was outside of your control. It does seem like control is a underlying situation here. Control, we think we are controlling our lives, but we are not. There's something larger than ourselves helping us to get through these experiences. And of course, seek professional help. Go to a counselor. A grief counselor can help you with your survivor's remorse, and a therapist can help you find ways to cope with feelings of guilt in a healthy, supportive environment. And it's probably a good idea to connect with other survivors who have gone through the same thing and are feeling the same way. And support groups are probably one of the best forms of healing in today's world. That they can be done online, and it can be done in person, and it's a safe place to share emotions and find solidarity with others who understand. And then to find meaning in your experience instead of thinking that it is a meaningless experience. If you turn your focus to meaningful things that you find to be meaningful, and it might have to do with helping others. It might have to do with raising awareness in your community, or finding a way to honor the memory of those who did not survive. And practice self-compassion. Survivors should learn to show themselves kindness and forgiveness. The more kind we are, the more forgiving we are in every circumstance, the faster we will grow into a higher state of consciousness. And that is what Angela teaches in her book, John's book. It's her book. They must remember that no amount of guilt can change the past, but they can choose to live in a way that honors their survival. So this feeling of being isolated and feeling of being overwhelmed is important to remember, that you're not alone in your experience. That's why these kinds of support groups can help you through. Very, very important. So it is important to search for peace of mind and realize that your survival has meaning, and your survival might be telling you to do some things in your life that you have neglected. And I mean these big important things that you have neglected. And by working through these emotions, you can honor your life and the life of those you have lost. There's going to be a video that shows up right here, and I encourage you to read John Meares' book called Pure Love. And we have to realize that there really is a life beyond the veil that is not annihilation, but it is pure love. I hope that you can subscribe, because I'm looking forward to gaining 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Bye.